Somerville, New Jersey, connecting faith and life. And you're watching Real Faith TV! Yeah!
My whole life I thought I wanted to be a teacher. So like in first grade I wanted to be a first grade teacher, second grade a second grade teacher, third grade a third grade teacher, and so on. By the time I reached college, I thought I had my whole life planned out. I thought I was going to be a high school history teacher, I was going to have a wife and a bunch of kids, nice house, white picket fence, dog in the backyard, happily ever after. There's an expression I like: if you ever want to make God laugh, just tell him your plans, because that's not what happened. And not that any of what I just said sounds unappealing or uninteresting to me, but rather when I was in college, something I really hadn't considered before sprung up and gave me great peace and great joy to think about it, and that was to be a priest. And 5 years later, here I am.
I think it's a big sacrifice to serve God as a profession, because you're obviously putting God first instead of your own needs and interests. And I think especially in today's world, there are a lot of things going on that you'd rather be doing.
Society, it's changing them, and it's harder for them to answer that calling, so I think we're going to see less.
A seminarian has responsibilities like learning how to say the Mass and preparing themselves to be priests. I think it takes definitely more than 10 years to become a priest, because they have a lot to learn about the Catholic Church.
Besides of all the theology that they have to learn, I think, in my opinion, it might be kind of like a retreat, because they obviously need to learn about their spiritual life and grow in that. And so I think that maybe they do a lot of missions, going out and kind of serving the poor and feeding the hungry and doing spiritual and corporal works of mercy like that.
I think one big misconception is that priests can't have fun. I've played ultimate frisbee with monks, which is still a religious order and like a priest, so I think they can have fun.
I would encourage a friend to join the priesthood, because we always need more priests. We need priests so we can receive the Eucharist and confess our sins in confession, and we need them to say the Mass.
I would support my friend or family member that wanted to become a Catholic priest, because if they want to do that, they should follow their dreams, and I think I'm going to support them no matter what.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a big sacrifice to become a priest, because you're giving up a lot of stuff, but at the same time, if that's what you think your calling is, then it shouldn't really be a sacrifice, it should be a way of life.
Celibacy is not an impossible hardship, but I mean it is hard because we are attracted to the opposite sexes, and I think it's just hard for someone to hold that for the rest of their life,
I never considered the priesthood because one day I'd like to get married, and I just don't see the priesthood in my future.
I admire that they're so open with people and that they're always willing to be there to help you, not just in Mass, but around campus here at Immaculata. They come and visit, and they make you feel like you're a part of it, as a parish and as a whole community.
I admire Catholic priests because of their hard work and dedication to the Catholic Church. Special shout out to Father Alex. Thanks for baptizing me into the Catholic Church.
What are the responsibilities of Catholic priests?
And what does it take to become one?
When young men or older men consider the idea of becoming a priest, they may face some uncertainty and doubt.
Are they willing to give up having a family of their own?
Are they willing to give up the opportunities of having a successful career, as so many professionals do?
And what about the vow of celibacy? Is this something they can make a commitment to?
And then they're studying in the seminary. Do seminarians only study theology?
How many years of study in the seminary does it take to become a Roman Catholic priest?
And what do you do in the seminary every day that helps you to become the best priest you can be?
A day in the life of a seminarian. That's what we'll be talking about today. Hi everyone, I'm Thomas.
And I'm Carolee. And this is Real Faith TV. First, we'd like to thank the students of Immaculata High School in Somerville, New Jersey for helping us open the show today.
And for sharing some of their thoughts and support and encouragement for those entering the seminary and into religious life.
We'll talk with a few of them again throughout the show as part of our wildcard segments.
But first, let's meet our spotlight guest, Deacon Rich, who was ordained a transitional deacon this past May. You met him earlier in this show.
He is studying to become a priest at St. Charles Borromeo Seminary in Philadelphia, where he is entering his final year of study. Let's hear about how he was called to religious life and what life is like in the seminary.
For many years, including my early high school years, I wasn't really that good of a Catholic. I didn't practice that much. Towards my late high school years and especially into my college years, I really became more open to God and more serious about my faith. And it was during that time that I felt that God was calling me to the priesthood. So I wouldn't say so much it was that I kind of like dreamt it up one day and thought, hey, I should do this, but rather I felt at peace thinking about it, and the longer I've been in seminary, the more I've realized that this is what God is calling me to do with my life. For my whole life, I thought I wanted to be a teacher, and the ironic thing is that even though I'm not going to be a teacher per se in the sense of a classroom teacher, being a priest involves lots of teaching. That's a major part of what the priesthood is. Doubts before and during discerning a priestly vocation are pretty normal. I think probably the main doubt that I've experienced and other guys have is thinking, well, I'm not worthy of this, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not talented enough. But there's an expression that I really like a lot, is that God does not call the equipped, He equips the called. If this is what you've been called and ordained to do, God will give the grace to do well and to persevere if we're open to God. There's a big age span. The youngest guys in the seminary come right out of high school, so about 18, 19, and then some of the oldest guys we have are in their 40s. But I would say probably the typical age is mid to late 20s. It usually takes between roughly 6 to 8 years to study to be a priest. For myself, I graduated with a history degree from Richard Stockton College prior to entering seminary. So for me, I didn't have to take any kind of like general education courses. I could just get right to the meat and potatoes, in a sense. Without a college degree, it's roughly 8 years of study.
I had no idea that it took that long to become a priest.
I thought it'd just be a few years. Well, let's see what our studio guests have to say.
Okay, they are Cassandra,
Desiree,
Joe,
Kelly,
Juliana,
and Mike. Have any of you guys thought about being a priest?
Well, I know that I've thought about it, and a lot of times I think, it would be great to be the priest and to lead God's people, but at the same time I also think, I want to grow up and I want to get married and have a family and,
Yeah, I have a priest who, I know a priest who married both my parents and baptized all my siblings, so he's like kind of like an uncle to us, kind of. And whenever we go to like functions, like church functions with him, he's always like, here you go, future priest coming up, and he like introduced me to all these other priests, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that, like I'm not too sure, but, because like, I mean, when I was younger, I thought about it, and sometimes I still think about like, what does it really mean to be a priest, I don't know if that's my calling or not.
We're all called to be educators of the faith, but in the Catholic Church, you have to be a male to become a priest, but I think it's wonderful how they dedicate their lives to the Catholic Church.
Have you ever thought about dedicating your life to the Catholic Church and becoming a
No,
priest?
not really. I've never really had much of a desire to be a priest, but that could change, so.
Right, because becoming a priest is a big job.
And like any big job, it makes sense that there would be a lot of preparation involved.
Courses in psychology, philosophy, and theology help seminarians prepare for the many aspects of priesthood.
Along with celebrating the Mass, they have to write interesting and inspiring homilies.
Many people may come up to them with questions about the church teachings, so they have to know all about our faith.
And of course, they are also in charge of marrying, baptizing, and burying the dead.
They hear confessions and companion the sick and the dying.
And that's only half of it.
They have to be ready to run parish offices, organize and delegate ministries, run schools, and worry about caring for the buildings and grounds of their parish.
They really do a lot. They do more than I realized. Seminary has to be pretty rigorous.
Let's go back to our spotlight guest, Deacon Rich, where he'll talk about what a typical day is like for him as a seminarian,
as well as the things he likes to do on his time off.
I don't know if there could be a typical day in the seminary, but I guess in terms of like the schedule of life in the seminary, we always begin and end the day in community prayer, what's called the Liturgy of the Hours. It's mostly the Psalms of the church. So we do that first thing in the morning around 7 and then in the evening at 5. But also within the day is the Mass, which is the most important part of the day. Classes throughout the day, Sometimes we have like workshops and seminars, and then the rest of the day is free time, whether it be working on schoolwork or hanging out with your friends or doing an errand or whatever you need to do or want to be doing. So weekends are my favorite time of the seminary, especially Sunday. Sunday is a very in-house day. We're encouraged to remain on campus on Sunday and spend time with each other in a more laid-back way. Saturday is the day off during the week. Saturday's a good chance to either, catch up on work or, hang out with friends or go back home to New Jersey or whatever I need to do.
Is there anything that surprises you about a seminarian's daily life?
I mean, I'm going to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised that they do stuff other than, sit in church or sit in class all day. They're people too, and I think that we forget that sometimes, and, they go and they have fun and they hang out. Just like us.
Yeah, I like how on Sundays it's like a community-based day where they get to have friends.
Yeah, it's remarkable how much sacrifice goes into the lives of seminarians. We had 2 seminarians. One was Carlos. He came from the Philippines. He came to St. Robert Bellarmine Church for a while, and he left his family, all his relatives in the Philippines, just to come here and become a priest. And then we had another one, Jim Grogan, who he was a widower. His wife died, and he had 2 kids, and he joined the priesthood.
I like what he said before, that God doesn't choose the enabled, he enables the chosen. And I really like how, everyone thinks that, becoming a priest is God talks to you, or a great white light will come down from the sky or something, right? But, maybe it's just, becoming a nurse or becoming a teacher or something. They're normal people, too.
Like you and Mike were saying, sometimes we can find it hard to see seminarians and priests as real people.
Each brings his family history and experiences into their ministry and role as clergy.
There is no cookie-cutter mold that makes all seminarians the same.
They say yes to God's call to serve the church.
They say yes to all God is urging them to be.
We are all called by God to be our most true selves.
For seminarians, this call opens the door to new life, a life of total service to others.
Let's go back to our spotlight guest, Deacon Rich, where he talks about some of the subjects he must study to become a priest.
And how he feels seminary is a lot different than going to college.
The seminary is both similar and different to your typical college. It's similar in the sense that you have your formal academics, classes, semester systems, but what's different is that academically speaking, we're all studying the same things, and that all of the men that are here at the seminary studying are all studying for the priesthood. We study many different subjects, lots of classes on scripture, church history, classes on the nature of God, the theology of the church, and also we have some practical classes in the sense that they're not directly theologically related, leadership type courses, seminars and things like that about how to manage with the idea of looking ahead to being in a parish. At your typical college, you're being evaluated merely on your performance academically, and while that's a part of what you're being evaluated on, you're also being evaluated on how you're growing, as a Catholic, how you're growing as a man, how well you relate to people and your different field assignments. So it's a little bit more broad in terms of what they're looking for in terms of your own growth as a person. When you're in your last couple years of seminary, during the summertime, you're given an assignment at a parish, which takes up a good amount of the summer, but there's typically, a few weeks off in the beginning and the end that you can use as vacation time, spend time with family or friends. There's a certain formality, but there's also a certain laid-backness to the seminary, because although all of my classmates and the other guys here feel called to the priesthood and we're studying to be priests, there's a certain fraternity and brotherhood in that we're all sharing that.
Why do you think living in a community is so important to people of faith, and especially seminarians?
I think in general it is important to have a strong Christian or Catholic community, because you need to be able to relate to someone. You can't be alone. As humans, you can't be alone. So it's cool to have even priests have that bond between their brothers. It's awesome.
I think it's also support, since being a priest is a hard decision to make, so they need someone to support them.
I know that I'm so blessed to have a community of friends. Recently, we all went out to go to adoration yesterday, and I just felt so with peace because I had a community of people to express the faith with, kind of.
For like seminarians like Carlos, who left his family in the Philippines, or Jim Grogan, who was a widower, it's important really for a community to form around them because they need the support. And they go through a hard time going through seminary school for 8 years. So like they really need a support base to help them and motivate them to keep going, you know?
I know my family invited him, one of our seminarians, and we had him over for dinner, and then the next time he invited us over for dinner too, and he taught us how to cook like rice and beans, which is like a home meal. So I think that's really cool, like you said, to just invite them in and to be a part of your community because it's new for them.
And I think community is good too because, you know, if you're in a community with people of the same faith and with the same ideas, it can definitely help strengthen your faith and, you know, maybe going into the seminary, they think, I think this is what I want to do, but not sure. And, you know, being around other men who also want to go and become priests can definitely help strengthen them and help them to solidify their standing.
Next, we would like to introduce you to our wildcard guest, Fiona, a student at Immaculata High School in Somerville.
We asked her what she admired most about the priest she knows.
Let's hear what she had to say.
The thing I admire most about priests is their genuine love and joy for God. I think that's so beautiful and so inspiring. And one of my teachers told us a story about a friend who recently became a priest. And what struck her was that he was just so joyful and so happy, and you could just tell that it was literally God working through him. And I remember a quote that she said was that the priest said, "I'm on my honeymoon." And I thought that was just so just beyond everything. And I really do admire priests for that because they give up everything in their life just to serve God. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And it is like a marriage. It's a marriage to the church. And their devotion and their dedication to that is amazing. And I think a lot of people, especially the younger generation, can learn from that because we need that kind of dedication and that kind of passion to drive us into whatever field we're going to, and whether it be the priesthood or something else, I think that's something really important and that we should really take a look into that.
Our Holy Father, Pope Francis, once said, "Unless we train seminarians capable of warming people's hearts,
walking with them in the night, of dialoguing with their hopes and disappointments, of mending their brokenness,
what hope can we have for our present and future journey?"
Through both events big and small, and everyday interactions, priests form special relationships with people and help to lead those people to Jesus.
The men who are preparing to be priests need to cultivate strong interpersonal skills.
In a similar way, the ability to connect with the real world is really important.
So the seminary environment helps seminarians to learn how they can best develop these skills and be good leaders to their people.
But all of this would be much more difficult without the strong support of family and friends.
Next, Deacon Rich shares with us how making this big life decision to enter the seminary was received by his parents.
And how the encouragement of others has been important to him in his life as a seminarian.
By the time I was in my final year of college, I made the decision that I wanted to enter the seminary, and the first people I told were my parents. At first, they weren't either for it or against it. They were a little cautious, only in the sense that it's a major life decision. You know, if I had come home and told them that I was going to marry my girlfriend, I think they would have had the same response. And it's not just like, should I go to 7-Eleven or should I go to Wawa or something? You know, it's a major life decision. And wanted to make sure that this is something that I really took time to think about and to figure out for my own life. Once I entered seminary, and now years into the seminary, frankly, I couldn't imagine them being more supportive, and I'm grateful for that, for their encouragement and their love throughout this process. And I'm grateful to God for much support from family and friends and from my parish. You don't undertake something like this for encouragement and for praise, but you know, it's helpful at times, especially like if you're having a stressful time or a tough week or something, just to know that there are people who are supporting you and loving you and praying for you. So that's been a great grace and blessing in my own life.
What are the qualities you most look for in a Catholic priest?
And what else do you think should be taught in a seminary?
I really like how my priest during his homily gives real life examples because it makes it a lot easier to understand, and I actually like learning about the faith that way.
Yeah, I really like when a priest actually seems like a real person. He doesn't seem like a person who spends all his time in the robes and the garments. He seems like a real person who goes out and does the same stuff we do, you know?
Yeah, and it's nice when they actually relate to the congregation and they know their people and they know what they need to relate to them and what message he needs to speak about.
What I think is also great is, a sense of humor, because because I know what my priest does sometimes early on in his homily, he'll have a little joke or, something funny, and, as soon as he says that, my attention is on him for the whole homily. And I think that that's a really good thing for priests to have.
I like what she said in the video, a priest is in love with Christ, and just the feeling of love and joyfulness that he has for a career, attracts, we're attracted to that. That's what I'm attracted to, that joy that the priests have for Christ.
Let's meet our next wildcard guest from Immaculata High School, Dan.
He will share his thoughts on the priesthood and if that's the path God has called him to follow.
For me, I've never really considered becoming a priest because I've always wanted to start a family and have a wife and then grow old and have grandchildren and be an uncle or something like that. So I never really considered it. But for my generation, I think that there's definitely a lot of kids that are interested in it. I mean, here at Immaculata, I've never really personally met anyone interested in it, but I think it takes time. It takes time to realize what you want to do with the rest of your life.
The time in the seminary also helps men to know whether or not they are really called to be priests.
The discernment process doesn't end when they enter the seminary.
You are not locked into priesthood just because you entered the seminary.
But neither entering nor leaving the seminary is something that is done on a whim.
It's through a lot of prayer and conversations with the vocations director or seminary personnel.
It's always important to reach out to someone else to help you sort through those thoughts and feelings.
That's part of why being in a community is so important.
Finally, Deacon Rich provides some advice for those considering the call to priesthood.
And how the words of Blessed Mother Teresa have been an inspiration throughout his discernment process.
There's an expression that I love that Mother Teresa said once. She would ask people to pray for her, and specifically she would say, "Pray that I don't get in God's way." And I always love that quote because even though it might not be something big, sometimes maybe what I want to do is maybe not what God wants me to do. Experiences that have helped me, maybe as inspirations, is just being able to meet so many people, both in the seminary and out of the seminary, that are looking and yearning for God in their own lives. People, young and old, wealthy or poor, every kind of person, and each person recognizing that they are created in the image and likeness of God, and that we are all called, no matter what our vocation is, to know God and to be drawn closer to Him. Being able to witness that and to be able to witness very privileged moments in people's lives, talking with people and trying to help people and helping them to see God at work in their lives. In terms of advice, I would say for a man who's thinking about the priesthood is, I would say, to not be afraid to do it, because if God is calling you to be a priest, God will give you what you need to persevere and to be well. Because frankly, nobody is worthy to be a priest. It's not something that I've earned. It's not something anybody's earned. I'm not worthy of it. My pastor's not worthy of it. The bishop's not worthy of it. The pope's not worthy of it. It's a gift from God, and He chooses whom He wants to bring His grace and His love and His presence into the world and help draw people to Himself.
I think it's cool that even when you see them in public, you can see that they're a witness of the faith.
I can relate to what he said about Mother Teresa, that sometimes we can't always pray what we want, but ask God, what do you want from me? Because sometimes we may be asking the wrong thing, and I think we need to trust that He knows what's right.
I think it's also interesting about how he said, how he and the bishop and the pope, they're not worthy to take it, but, being a priest, it's not something that we take, it's something that we're given.
Yeah, Deacon Rich seems like a very cool guy, and what he said really changed the way I thought about seminarians, kind of in the way as it's more of becoming a better self, a better version of you, instead of just training to be a priest and just school and school.
St. John Paul II once said that a priest's human personality must be the bridge whereby other people can encounter the person of Jesus the Redeemer.
Seminarians become the best priests they can be by becoming the best versions of themselves.
By surrendering their lives to God and seeking God's will in their life,
and by using their unique gifts, talents, quirks, and experiences,
they can help others to come face to face with God.
And help us to understand the deep love that God has for all of us.
So are you or someone you know being called to serve God in the priesthood?
We'd love to hear from you.
Contact us at realfaithtv.com.
Or share your thoughts with us on Twitter.
And we'll leave you today with this from St. John Paul II regarding his call to the priesthood.
At a certain point in my life, I became convinced that Christ was saying to me what he had said to thousands of people before me. Come, follow me.
There was a clear sense that what I heard in my heart was no human voice, nor was it just an idea of my own.
Christ was calling me to serve him as a priest, and you can probably tell that I am deeply grateful to God for my vocation to the priesthood.
Nothing means more to me or gives me greater joy than to celebrate Mass each day and to serve God's people in the church.
That has been true ever since the day of my ordination as a priest. Nothing has ever changed this, not even becoming Pope.
So like St. John Paul II said, listen to where God is calling you.
And don't be afraid to answer that call. Know that you're not alone.
Thanks for watching.
We'll see you next time on
Real Faith TV.
God bless.